Black Phone 2 is a 2025 American film directed by Scott Derrickson and stars Mason Thames, Madeleine McGraw, and Ethan Hawke yet again. It's a sequel to The Black Phone from 2021, which was based off the Joe Hill short story and was again written by Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. The plot follows Finn and Gwen 4 years after the events of the first film, with Finn kind of struggling to move on from those events, and Gwen, she's been receiving visions of murders at a Christian winter camp for kids. So it's kind of funny how I thought the trailer for this movie actually looked pretty cool, and I had totally planned on seeing it, in the theater and all that, but I wasn't, super excited by any means, until literally, earlier this week after I rewatched The Black Phone. I mean, I liked the trailer, and, I have a newfound appreciation for the first film, so yeah, I was totally down. Typically, I'm interested in film sequels, even though in my opinion they aren't usually as good. They don't always work. They often don't work. And there are things that I definitely look for in sequels. Was it necessary to actually make this? Does it advance the story? Does it address unanswered questions, or is it just a cash grab? And really, though, a lot of those are pretty much antithetical for a lot of film fans, and I get it. A lot of people consider sequels just completely unnecessary, and oftentimes they are. So far, Scott Derrickson has given us a very 70s, 80s classic American horror style franchise, and I'm happy about it. And I use the word franchise because I'm just guessing there will be a sequel. No, that's not a spoiler or anything. Just if you haven't seen this movie, it's just a guess. The first film made a shitload of money. It made a ton, and I assume this will also do well. It's not so far. It's not looking. The numbers I don't think are as good, but we'll see. Anyway, so the year now is 1982, which is cool because the first film was like a 70s throwback. This one is 80s, and I really love that. The 80s is my favorite decade, anyways. One thing I did miss though, and this is not really a complaint. If it's a complaint, it's a small one. But I miss the horror movie references. The kids talking about Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And Finn watching old black and white horror films. An early '80s horror reference would have been so perfect here. It would have been so cool. But I digress. And now, the characters are a little bit grown up. They're slightly different. They still have the same feel, and they did a really good job there. Finn is no longer, he's no longer afraid of things. He's not the kid that he was, 4 years ago. He's basically turned into Robin from the first film. The first time you see him, he's beating the shit out of some kid at school, just, knocking the ever-living fucking piss out of him. Ever-living piss? I'm not really sure what that means. But so the first film was kind of about him learning to be in control, and fight back instead of running away from everything. Gwen has recently started having dreams again, involving murders at a place called Alpine Lake Camp from decades ago. These visions are from. She also has dreams about her mom. So not being able to move past this all, which, is completely understandable, she convinces her, Finn to help her, who has pretty much been ignoring attempts of the dead, trying to reach out to him again. He doesn't feel like he can deal with that shit yet again. And they also recruit Ernesto, who's Robin's younger brother, which I thought was really cool. And he's got a thing for Gwen. He's got a little crush on her. He's a decent character, maybe not someone that makes a huge impact on the film, but he's decent. I like him okay. He's not anything like his brother was. So I thought that was cool. It wasn't just Robin Part 2. It's hey, here's Robin's little brother. They're nothing alike. So I liked that. And there are other new characters also. None of them are, in my opinion, particularly interesting. They're okay. They're not bad. But you still have, Finn and Gwen. They're good characters. That's all that really matters to me. You do have, their dad also. He plays... I don't know if I'd say he plays a bigger part in this. Maybe about the same as the first one. So he's in it again, which is cool. And of course you got the grabber. So, and of course, we need to talk about the grabber himself. Played by Ethan Hawke, of course, again. I think I like the character, even more now, in general. But I also like him more in this film than I did in the first film. Which, I liked him in that one too. I just like him more now. He's much darker here. He's more sadistic and violent. Which leads to this being, kind of a much gorier film. Which I'll explain. And what's funny, though, is that in the first film, you know that he murders kids. You just never see it. You never saw it at all. In this film, you see some of those murders in Gwen's dreams. And these murders, man, were honestly so much more brutal than I expected. I mean, we're talking like extreme levels of gore here. Not like throughout the whole film, but there are a few very gory scenes that, some people might even be bothered by. So the grabber's motivation here is pretty simple. It's maybe even too simple, but whatever. This is horror after all. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking all the time. But he just wants to fucking kill Finn and Gwen and torment them even. Since, Finn killed him after all, and also made him, murk his own brother in the first film, which he's still pissed about, I guess. So yeah, the grabber's still dead, and he's actually more dangerous now because, how do you kill a human that's no longer a human, I guess. And he can attack Gwen in her dreams, so as she's having her her prophetic dreams or whatever, he can do a Freddy Krueger and attack her. And the Black Phone films have always been about supernatural elements, so I don't feel like anything here goes too far. If you're worried about it just going off the deep end, I don't really think it does. And yeah, the Nightmare on Elm Street influence is undeniable, yet it's done in a way that doesn't feel cheap or derivative. I liked it. I would also call this a slasher film as to where, the first film wasn't, in my opinion. Another thing that reminded me of classic American horror franchises was that the grabber, he gets a new look, a little bit of a makeover. Look at the Nightmare and Friday series. Freddy and Jason, they both got a new look in almost every movie, and I loved that. I was always looking forward to seeing if I could pick out just the slight differences, little updates. So he doesn't get, like a completely new look or anything like that, but like an update. And back to what I said at the beginning, this is a sequel that pushes the story forward, in my opinion. It also adds to the existing lore from the first film. So if you were a fan of that, you might have some questions answered here, and you'll also, learn more about certain things. I know that was a super vague statement. Probably didn't really add up to much, but I don't want to tell you too much here. And again, though, if you were a fan of that first film, you might not care for the lore updates. I liked them, but you might not. I think that they worked, in my opinion. Other than I did enjoy them, but I think they truly worked, which is all I really ask for in my sequels. Just make things work, push the storyline a little bit. They have to mean something, and if not, they at least have to be really entertaining. I can think of some horror sequels that weren't great, but were fun as hell. But I felt invested here, and I also liked, how they go into, Finn and Gwen's mom's lore a little bit more too. I lost my mom at a youngish age, not as young as them, but, I appreciated, her remaining part of the overall Black Phone story. So I'm giving the Black Phone a 7 out of 10. Same score I gave to the first film, which I do think, just so we're clear, I do think that's maybe a slightly better film than this, not surprisingly, but I liked the meaner, gorier approach here. It's kind of more my cup of tea, I guess. I also like the cool winter setting, which was a kind of, in my opinion, like a dichotomy to the previous summer setting. Seeing the grabber on ice skates and stuff, and just murdering people in the snow, shirtless and stuff. Pretty creepy. That also left me hoping for a third film, with or at least something cool from Scott Derrickson, sooner rather than later. Cheers, guys, and I'll see you at the multiplex.
Subscribe right now, please.